Hi, welcome to Unprecedented Journey. I'm your host, Jeff Oppenheim, and I thank you for joining me today this auspicious week. And I don't mean the holidays, as we've been already focusing on gift giving, but I'm talking about December 10th, and that is International Human Rights Day. Too often, I think human rights is an intellectual discussion, something removed from many of us simply because we live where we live, or maybe because of the color of our skin or our economic situation. But it's real. It's as real as all of this. It's the air that we breathe. Think about it. You'll suddenly realize and appreciate the air the moment you don't have it. I can't breathe. Human rights, the same thing. You'll know it the moment you don't have it, the moment it's challenged or taken away from you and denied you. I can't breathe. Around the world, people in our backyard, in fact, that may be going through situations where their human rights, basic human rights, are taken away. I can't breathe. That phrase, yes, came out of BLM, Black Lives Matter, yet it was heard round the world, wasn't it? COVID, as I said before, attacks the capacity to breathe. I can't breathe. Well, this day is a day to put forth that action and that understanding. So, with this being a resource channel, as it were, these broadcasts always bringing you different opinion, perspective, and experts, I wanted to invite a friend of mine. She's not only a resource here, you've met her here before, of course, Alibe Hamacher, but she's also a resource for me to help me be informed. She works very closely with the United Nations, and particularly, she's very involved with a campaign called Agenda 2030, which at its core, I would have to say, is a basic human rights campaign. So let me introduce you to her now. Alibe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for having me again on your show.
Well, let's jump in right away. And you've heard my description, certainly, as we opened. What are human rights? How do we define them?
Well, the basic description, Jeff, is all humans are born with equal and indisputable rights and fundamental freedoms that we need to respect.
Well, why this day, and how are we really using this day to recognize these rights?
We celebrate the International Day of Human Rights, which the official day is December 10th, and we do it because we need to make sure that everybody is aware that these rights exist. They become familiar with them, they read the descriptions, and we want them to learn because this will help them to protect themselves when their rights are violated, as well as they can protect their family members and eventually their communities.
Well, I guess that begs the next question, which is, what are they?
Well, first of all, we have to state that every human being has the right to be treated with respect and dignity, and they have the freedom to walk this earth and do whatever they need to do for themselves. But the respect comes, and the dignity is supposed to be shown no matter what color the person is, no matter what race, language they speak, their religion, their political opinions, their country they come from, the economic status that they have, or the birth of a status, language. I think I gave you all. So very important that we protect them, and people learn and protect not only themselves, but also protect others within their community.
Well, how did this all come about?
In 1946, the United Nations, the beginnings of the United Nations, and at the same time, the Economic and Social Council was put together under the umbrella of the United Nations. And obviously, coming after the Second World War, everything was a disaster. You know, the economy, that at the time, the atrocities that some people went through with the war, and just everything was upside down, and there was no hope for humans at the time. So the Economic and Social Council, they decided to put a commission together that was going to oversee human rights. And this commission was put together by 18 members of the member states under the United Nations, And the 18 members, they all came from different nations with very different political views because they wanted diversity. And they created and they put together the draft of the Declaration of Human Rights. Well, actually, to call it the right way, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So they put together this very tiny book, but very powerful. Everybody should read it. One of the things that you should be very proud of is that the person they chose to chair the committee was Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, someone who they're continuing to write books about. Fascinating woman. There's a new book out by David McKellis, I think. Just heard about it on NPR, called Eleanor. So, yes, quite a lot of accomplishments from a first lady.
From my part, being Chilean, I was very surprised to learn that we had the only Latino in from the 18th in the group. The members was Hernan Santa Cruz, who was from Chile. So imagine, I was very surprised, very proud, because I'm also, as you know, I was born and raised in Chile, and I am an advocate of human rights. I have been all my life. So this was very, very, very important to me. But to get to the end of this, when they finished drafting everything, and I took 2 years to draft everything and to pass it through the UN system, and on December 10, 1948, the Declaration of Human Rights was presented to the world, and now we all have the book here, and we need to learn.
Well, now, you've also touched on something that can sometimes be a delicate conversation, the United Nations and its effectiveness. Now, you work, I know, very closely with it, and you certainly have educated me about the United Nations, and we've visited there many times and participated in many things that they've done there. But I think even that people don't know that they can go and visit beyond being a tourist. Let's talk from your personal perspective. What is the UN and how effective is it?
Well, I would ask you one question. How long has it been that we have not had a world war? Yeah. That's your answer. The only reason that we haven't had that situation happen again is because the UN has been put in place. And the UN, even though we call it an intergovernmental organization, which is there to protect freedoms and help develop nations, and also check on how everybody behaves. At the UN, you have all nations watching what's happening. You have committees supporting one opinion or the other, but everything moves, all the mechanisms move, so things can be talked out, resolutions can be found way before we explode into another war, because we cannot afford to do that again.
Well, I think when a lot of us think about the UN, we think very specifically about the delegates, right? The diplomats that descend, especially for the General Assembly every year. But as I've learned from you, the UN really is a community of a lot of different divisions, isn't it?
This is exactly how those mechanisms that I was talking about are working together to help the countries. And by the way, everybody should know that the UN has 193 member states, and those member states are the representatives of the very countries that we have in this earth. So it is not a separate entity. It's the entity that all those countries put together because they wanted to have a place where they could find resolutions, have a place to speak and to negotiate. So, but as you mentioned, I have them here. There are 6 of them. So imagine the UN being a human body, and it has 6 organs. So those 6 organs are the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Secretariat, the International Court of Justice, and the Trusteeship Council. But what a lot of people don't know about the UN is the other part, the civil society part, which is handled by the Department of Global Communication.
Well, let me stop you there. What is civil society?
Well, Jeff, it's really funny. Civil society is you and me, and everyone else that lives around us and live with us and share space with us. But in between that, we have nonprofit organizations. And nonprofit organizations under the Department of Global Communication are called the civil society side of the UN. And these organizations, as we all know, they are the ones that are working on the ground with the communities, offering services the community needs. So this is as simple as I can put it. You have the political side with all the leaders of those countries, and you also have a vast majority of nonprofit organizations coming from all around the world and showing their practices and also be present. And in some instances, because their presence is so strong, really helping to make changes, legislative changes within their countries or regions or towns where they live. That's how powerful they are, because it's the power and voice of you and me.
Now, I know you have been very involved, particularly with the civil society division, on a project that's UN-wide, of course, but it's called Agenda 2030.
Well, the Agenda 2030 started in 2015, and it was put together because of global warming and all the disasters that we were having around the world. And each part of the agenda is addressing a problem that countries are facing right now. This is the official logo. So we have 17 sustainable development goals addressing issues that we are having within communities right now. And the hope was that by the year 2030, all these issues will be addressed. And even though we are addressing them, we are afraid that we are not going to meet them by the year 2030.
Well, how are these 17 sustainable development goals quintessentially human rights goals?
Well, Jeff, how can you demand a country to afford human rights to their communities if they don't have the basic community structure for a family to have a home and grow economically with their jobs if there are no jobs? How can you demand a country to protect somebody in their old age if they barely have enough money to take care of the kids when they are growing up? Or how can you ask a country to avoid poverty and no hunger when they are not having the economic balance to do this, to really offer that to their communities? So the idea is that, yes, we have human rights, right, are here. We have them written and all that, and the majority of the country do understand that this exists and they follow. But having the rights written and no structure to help those countries to be better and build better cannot help communities to grow and to protect their human rights.
So in essence, the 17 SDGs really are actionable items that we can move forward in our collective global community, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Give us an example of these goals. In fact, I think there's one from your country.
As you know, or I don't know if you are aware of this, but Chile has the longest and the widest coastal limits.
Mm-hmm.
Our responsibility was to maintain it clean, because you know the ocean pollution is a disaster. So the Chileans, knowing that was the biggest problem in their hands. So, like I said, under the United Nations, all member states, they are working on this. And funny that we were talking about civil society. This was something that started with civil society. Civil society, these organizations with volunteers, they started to go to the ocean, to the beaches, and clean up after people were using them. And the groups were so invested in maintaining this clean, but they were not making a big impact. So what they decided is to go to the legislative level, which was to enforce or force the Chilean government to abandon plastic bags and to start using either paper or reusable bags.
What I love about what you just gave as an example it so clearly demonstrates how related these goals are, right? Because in the case of Chile, they were addressing an issue in Goal 14, life underwater, but you had to go about it by fixing something related to, what is it, 15?
15.
Life on land. So it really, these are all interrelated, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and especially if you put it that way, the garbage wasn't in the ocean, it was in the land. Each goal, it's wonderfully thought out, and obviously we need to focus on all of them, but some countries do focus more on one thing than the other, but then civil society within those countries would take care of other goals within their community.
Near and dear to both of our hearts is goal number 4, which relates to a quality education for all, particularly on the elementary side. And I know you've done a lot of work and serve on the advisory board of the PADF, the Pan American Development Foundation, who works in regions such as the Caribbean and, of course, Central and South America. I've done a lot of work with regards to education in Africa, in Kenya with Many Hopes, the school there, Mario Malik's project for girls in the South Sudan, and of course all the work I did in Angola, Africa. Let's use that as the example. Say I'm a nonprofit or a corporation, I come to you and I say, I want to get involved in education. Now, other than making the donation or some such, what would you advise? How would you suggest that I get working to align with these goals, work with the UN, and start advancing an agenda for quality of education?
Well, one of the things that I always recommend to every nonprofit that I encounter is to align with the Department of Global Communication for the purpose of what I mentioned before. They handle all the civil society affiliations and all the programs that they have, resources. They have information to bring you resources from different places, or the fact that you can be there and work with other organizations or learn from practices of other organizations that they are taking care of the same goal, but in a different country. That's a very good way for an organization to start taking advantage of resources. And for the corporate side, if they are looking to donate money to a cause, the corporate side usually knows already in which direction they want to go. If it is education, I would make the match. I would suggest which organizations that I know, because I have to know how they work first. How are they delivering services and education, and then I connect them, and then the partnership is built. So it's always the nonprofit, the corporation, and the UN are a must to work together.
Alibe, you of course not only talk the talk, you walk the walk. So I want to know how you put action into, never mind your day at the office, but your day at home.
Well, that's a very good question. First of all, if you are a parent, that's where you start. You have to start educating your children about the fact that we do have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This book has to be in every home.
Well, in fact, spoiler alert, I know you're going down this direction and going to create a YouTube channel of your very own, offering us a variety of tips that align with these goals. Can I put you on the spot and get kind of a preview here for all of us?
Well, as you know, Jeff, during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic in March, I received so many phone calls from my friends asking me, oh, Alibe, I bought so much food. What do I do with it? Especially fresh products. I was very surprised how many people didn't know how to take care of this. So I started thinking that one of the ways that I can help is by teaching these techniques, which we did already with your series, 5 or 6 episodes on sustainable kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I don't want to get stuck only in the vegetables, fresh produce. I really want to help, because I realize that as I am trying to become more sustainable myself in my house, or teaching my kids, or at the office, as you said, I am encountering problems and questions and resources. I don't have them. So when I go through that, I figure it out, and then I move forward and I change to the next sustainable adventure that I want to travel. One of them, it's every time I went to a park or at the beach, I always saw garbage everywhere. And it irritated me so much that it ruined my walk around the park. So, I'm very practical. I went to Home Depot and I realized that they have those long stick with an arm that you can press it and you can pick up garbage or you can pick up things from a higher place, which I need sometimes because I'm not that tall. But this little stick and a plastic bag, it gives me so much pleasure when I go and I want to walk around. You know what? It really relaxes me. It gives me peace because now I'm not complaining about the damage of other people doing unto the nature, but I'm taking care of it myself.
In closing, what should be our greatest takeaway?
I think that's one of the most important things that I want to teach with this series is that, yes, we already established we all have human rights, and those rights should be respected. But at the same time, those rights, they come with your responsibility. You have the same responsibility to respect other people's rights, and you should do that. Remember, the power starts with you. You have the power, you have the rights, and you have the power to change things yourself.
I think for my own sake, I'd add one more. Don't get angry, get active.
Get active, yes, that is the best. I think that's the best way to really focus those two important goals here.
Well, again, thank you, Alibe, for being here today. It is always a joy to work with you and to learn from you as well.
Well, thank you for having me and announcing my new show.
We look forward to it, and I thank all of you as well for joining us in this discussion today. We always try and provide you with added resource and certainly personal perspective. And we got a lot of that today. So if you heard something you like, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. And of course, you heard that Alibe is going to be launching her own channel with a lot of great useful tips for all of us at home on how we can get more active. So the best way to find out about that is subscribe to this channel today, because we'll be notifying you not only the next video we put up, but especially when we air and promo her first video, which is going to be great. And I also want to encourage you to leave that comment or really send us a question. If you'd like more information, maybe you're a parent at home and you want to figure out how to teach these goals and get your kids more involved, or maybe get your kids' school more involved, send us a comment. I'll make sure Alibe gets that and answers it for you. Okay? Simple as that. Meanwhile, make sure you comment, as I said, share with a friend or on your social media, and of course like. Ping! Like. Anyway, it's all a way for us to stay one connected community, sharing great resource, sharing perspective. I hope you'll join me for the next episode, but until then, I'm Jeff Oppenheim for Unprecedented Journey, encouraging you to stay safe, stay well, and stay active.